heads up on what
So we
I'm
got
thinking.
two minutes?
Boy,
2 minutes?
interesting. I got you. Oh, yeah.
Okay, you ready? Okay. Having reached the hour of 5 p.m., I'm calling the April 15th, 2024 Finance Committee Workshop to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Wright,
Here.
Vice Chair Gutierrez-Brayton,
Here.
Chairperson Bavaro,
Here.
and also present, we have Vice Mayor Alvarez, Councilmember Ricky, and Mayor Zwollen.
Thank you. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As noted on the agenda, public comments will be in person only. Zoom will still have Zoom available for viewing and wordly translation. Does anyone wish to speak on any items under public comment? This is for items not on the finance agenda. You have 3 minutes to speak. Anyone wishing to address the committee is asked to follow the rules of decorum. The rules of decorum are posted at the entrance of the chamber. Seeing that we do not have anybody wanting to address the public, public comment period is now closed. Clerk, were there any written comments received?
No, Chairperson.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is new business. I ask that we all hold our questions until each of the departments have their presentation. City Manager Joe Lopez will present the draft proposed for fiscal year 2024-25 operating and multi-year budget for the City of Modesto.
Thank you, Chair Bavaro, committee members, mayor, and council. We are excited to kick off the fiscal year 2024-25 budget. City staff has worked diligently over the last several months to prepare to draft a preliminary budget for the different departments and projects throughout the city. In preparation for submitting a balanced budget, we have projected future income sources and analyzed the various funding needs of the different departments that support and provide services to the residents and businesses in our community. In the presentations ahead, you will see a transformational budget impacted by the much-needed Measure H funding. In the second year since the sales tax was passed by our residents, we have been provided a stable revenue stream that enables our city to enhance essential services, to invest in public safety, and to support some of our cherished community programs that might have otherwise been eliminated. With this additional revenue, we are mindful of the necessity to be fiscally responsible and create sustainable, long-term strategies for ensuring that we can meet the needs of our residents for many years to come. There continues to be challenges in the non-Measure H general fund, but we are doing our best to navigate through the current needs and priorities of our community. The voters had faith in our ability to responsibly allocate these funds in a manner that makes them feel connected to their community and supported by local services and amenities that the City of Modesto can provide to them. We will continue to work hard every day to build community trust, to be responsive to community needs, be transparent, and to provide efficient and effective public service. We will continue investing in initiatives that improve the overall quality of life for residents, creating an engaged and thriving community. In these presentations, our departments will highlight the efforts in balancing the current needs of the community with a plan to address the necessary preventative and deferred maintenance we experienced prior to Measure H. I'm appreciative of our staff and their effective fiscal management and their careful allocation of resources that contribute towards this balanced budget. I will now turn it over to our budget manager, Steve Christensen, to give an overview of the budget and outline the week ahead.
Thank you, Joe. Steve Christensen, budget manager for the city. So first we want to kind of take a look back at the council retreat and some of the outcomes from that retreat, just to kind of set the tone for the work that we've been doing on the budget. So at the council retreat, there was a general consensus to continue working towards the current priorities, strategic priorities and goals. There was an emphasis that was given to the desire to evaluate the rail ACE train and the viability of the airport. Another thing that was given some emphasis is that they wanted to see, or council wanted to see, continued collaboration with universities and colleges to offer kind of educational and vocational services that will kind of support the development for current residents, people in the area that might go to those schools, for the local business to help with like how they're promoting themselves and learning those skills to go back into the local workforce. 5 goals that the council believe would receive additional should receive additional resources among the strategic goals are listed there above you in the presentation. Again, focusing on community safety, housing, economic vitality. There was also some operational strategic priorities that were discussed at the retreat. In the survey leading up to the retreat, council believed that these are the top 5 operational strategic priorities that should receive additional focus. So some of the outcomes from the actual retreat, when we had the retreat back in January from council, focused on a number of different areas. I'm not going to go through and read all of these, but just highlighting some of them. So in housing, we have the need for additional housing, community safety, continuing to expand the alternative response models, and then homelessness, exploring ways to create more beds for the homeless. At the airport, again, council wanted to see us continue to evaluate the feasibility of the runway expansion, promoting tourism and economic vitality, and then assuring there is a plan to create beautification zones at key entrances to town in the beautification category. Looking at these last 4 in communication, creating a plan for innovative communication to the public, exploring ways to use new technologies to speed operations and innovation and creativity, customer service, focusing on improved customer service in all departments, and then on city council, this is my favorite one, expanding council's appreciation to city staff to improve morale and culture. Mm-hmm. You already do a great job at that, but again, that was something that came out of the council retreat. So again, we took those outcomes from the council retreat to help build the new budget for 24-25. We're going to focus a little bit now on the general fund. So in the general fund draft proposed budget, again, these numbers are just the general fund. Measure H is not included in these revenue figures here or in the expense figures that we'll show later. Measure H we'll talk about separately. So in the general fund, in terms of proposed revenues, you can see slight increases across the board. Property tax continues to be strong in Modesto as a revenue source. Sales tax, we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown. Really just due to the impacts of the long-term inflation that everyone is experiencing, so it's kind of changing spending habits from all the residents. but we do anticipate a slight growth for next year. And then going through, you can look at transient occupancy tax. We kept that one flat in the estimates for next year. There are some hotels that are going offline and possibly some new ones coming online. So we might come back in the mid-year and adjust that depending on the outcomes of those new establishments. And then the other thing I want to point out is on the ARPA standard allowance. It's the third row from the bottom. So in fiscal year 22-23, we had an allotment from ARPA, about $4 million, that we didn't end up needing to be used to balance the budget in that fiscal year. So going forward, we're taking that amount that was set aside for the COVID labor response that goes into the general fund to use that in this fiscal year of about $2 million. And we'll have a separate ARPA presentation during the entire workshops that will actually explain a little bit more on what we're doing with the ARPA spending and reallocations. Looking at the general fund revenue history, you can see, again, pretty steady growth across the fund, the general fund. Looking at 23-24 to 24-25, you can see about a $6 million increase in terms of total revenues. A lot of that, again, we're seeing in the property tax area, and then UUT and some of the other departmental revenues. On the proposed expenditures for the general fund, public safety continues to be kind of a top priority or top percentage of the general fund budget. So it's about 82% of the operating budget at this point in time. Again, just focusing on additional funding for public safety. One thing I do want to point out on this chart, well, a couple things. In the engineering department, that's a new department, so we established that during the budget last fiscal year. So that's a new department for this, and they, again, managing the engineering services for the city and construction admin. And then going on to the Office of the City Auditor, there's a slight decrease there, and that was really just due to some IT-ISF decreases. The transfers out, you can see a pretty substantial decrease of about $2.6 million. That's really just looking at the subsidies we have, and then some loans that were paid off from the general fund to other funds. So that's where we see the savings there. And then looking at the variance rate. So if you remember, we established the variance rate as a way to kind of incorporate savings that we would see during the year for salaries and benefits. We want to capture those at the beginning of the year to make sure that we're fully expending our budget. So we implemented the variance rate. This year, one thing that's different on the variance rate is that it's not just a straight 5% across all the departments. We've increased the police department variance rate to about 14% just based off of their historical averages and vacancies. They are doing a great job, though, at starting to expand and get more positions filled, so that could be something that is adjusted, but the average rate in the past was about 17%, so we are below that amount. Looking up the expenditure history, so what I really want to point out here is that you can see our expenses continue to grow in the general fund, and that's outpacing our increase in revenues that we see on an annual basis. So the expenditures going up for salaries and benefits, for PERS, discretionary expenses are increasing now just because we're seeing the price of goods going up, especially in the fleet area, so for parts and then for fuel as well. So there's kind of the overview of the areas that we're seeing large expense, not large, but continued increases in expenditures. This next chart here is kind of showing our variance between the revenues coming in and then the expenses that we budget or the actuals in the prior years. So pointing out in really the 24-25 draft proposed budget, that $8.1 million, that's kind of that budget deficit that we've talked about in years past. So that's a gap between our general fund revenues that are budgeted and our expenses that we have. That $8.1 million we'll see later when we look at our Measure H funding, because that's going to be the amount that's being contributed from Measure H to close that gap. And we'll talk about that more when we go into the Measure H section, which is next. So for the non-Measure H proposed adjustments, excuse me, let's do these first. So we do have some proposed adjustments in the general fund budget as well as a non-general fund. In the general fund, we're proposing about $474,000 in adjustments to the general fund. These include adding a buyer position in finance. We're looking at adding a police range and training center technician, and that will have a revenue offset, so that's why you see a lower cost there of $24,000. And then also the creation of a new department, which will be talked about more in the city manager's presentation. On the non-general fund side of things, adding additional heavy equipment mechanics in the fleet area to kind of help with the apparatus that they're working on for fire. So we're adding a couple of positions there. And then also at the bottom of there, you see a number of positions in utilities for a quality control officer, environmental compliance technician, and the environmental compliance inspector. Those are really related to the fees that are going to be talked about during the fee presentation for storm drain fees. They'd be collecting additional fee revenue. Now we'll go to the Measure H overview. So again, just some history. Measure H was approved and then ratified by council in November of 2022. The sales tax started being collected on April 1st of 2023. To date, we've received about $40.2 million. Again, remember, those are going to be 2 months in arrears, so that's what we've actually received to date. We have an estimated annual revenue of $42.8 million in fiscal year 24-25. You can see what's been approved for spending in the prior years at the bottom right there. So $4.48 million in the quick wins that were done in 22-23, and then another $27.1 million in 23-24. This fiscal year, the 24-25 draft proposed budget includes $41.2 million in Measure H funded programs. Looking at the forecast for the Measure H fund, again, steady increases here, really on par with what we're seeing in the sales tax. It's slightly higher in some of the out years. And then you can see the red section there showing what our anticipated general fund deficit is. And you can see that it just continues to grow, again, based off of those things I mentioned. So whether it's PERS or the discretionary expenditures and for parts and fuel, and then even some contract increases as well. Overall, though, we have an estimated average revenue of about $43.6 million for Measure H over that time period, and then we also note that it would be reduced by the general fund deficit there in the red. For the Measure H, for the overall spending plan, in the proposed Measure H spending plan for 24-25, we have approved spending on new programs about $22.2 million. We have the ongoing Measure H spending, so that's for things like positions that were approved. In the prior spending plan, there's about $10.9 million. And then there's where you see the general fund budget deficit funding of $8.1 million. So that gets us to our total of $41.3 million. In the middle section, we just want to kind of break it down a little bit further in terms of the total spending. So you have a breakdown of one-time spending versus ongoing spending. And right now I'm smiling because I'm kicking myself because last year I did this and I said I was going to make a graph and I never made the graph next year, or for council. So the one-time spending, again, the idea is that we want to have a lot of one-time spending in the beginning and not obligate towards a lot of ongoing expenditures as we start these initial years of Measure H. So you can see the $15.9 million of one-time being proposed in the new spending plan, and then we have ongoing expenditures of $17.2 million. That number there is inclusive of the $10.9 million from the prior year. So really new ongoing expenditures of about $7 million, 6.8. And then you add in the general fund deficit again there to get to the total of $41.3 million. The bottom chart there is to break down the categories of expenditures. We have a handout. It was supposed to be with your packets, but I'll have Casey give it to the city clerk. So this handout that we're going to provide you right now shows you the complete breakdown of all the proposed items for the Measure H spending plan. So as you get this handout, you'll see we have increases across the departments, but also across these spending plan categories. So we have increases for positions, increases for equipment. Fire is heavy on equipment for purchases of life packs, Lucas devices, and then rescue equipment replacement funding. And then in the police department, we're adding police technician positions, senior police technician position, police civilian manager, and then 5 code enforcement officers, and then police civilian investigators as well. One of the things I will mention as part of the spending plan, we started to identify areas in the general fund budget that we would want to move over to Measure H, because those are areas that would have either been reduced had we not received the tax, and they are focusing now on the police area. So moving of CSOs into the Measure H fund, moving of the traffic safety division to the Measure H fund, and then a movement of 9 police officers into the Measure H fund. Again, the idea is that Measure H will be the real build out of things like traffic as we continue to fill those bodies in police. So we'll be able to put more positions in the traffic program. And then the same idea with the CSOs, moving those over into Measure H, because that's really what the focus is for that area on the non-sworn positions in police department and the impact that they're having, and you'll definitely see that during the police department presentation. This handout can be found at the link below just for the public. Going over our other major funds, so we have our enterprise funds, water, again, probably the largest enterprise fund, 71.9 million, and then we go down to wastewater, 51.2, solid waste, surface transportation, about 17 million, then storm drain and the capital improvement support fund. Total fund breakdown by all funds can be seen on slide 23. So this is a breakdown of our general fund proposed budget of 194.3 million, and then all of our enterprise funds, our insurance funds, basically all of the funds in the city broken down on this chart. So we have a total budget of 578.9 million for the new fiscal year. You'll also see a line, it's the 4th line from the top, showing the Measure H spending plan expenditures. So just kind of going over what the week's going to look like. We'll be here for the workshops, the April 15th through the April 18th date. We'll have our overview presentation, the charter offices and department presentations, and then special presentations. These special presentations include items like the software, hardware maintenance, ARPA, deferred maintenance, and sponsorships. And then at the end, if there's any questions we can't answer during this, the time that you ask us questions, we'll bring those as follow-up, and then we'll have the committee recommendations at the end of the workshops. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does the Finance Committee have any questions of the Budget Director?
I do, Chair. Will we be able to ask questions at the end of every department presentation?
Yes.
And will we be approving the department budget as one budget at the end, as one budget, or per department?
So it'll be taken as one budget at the end. When we do the recommendations, we'll have a recommendation for Finance Committee to forward the draft proposed budget on to Council for review and approval. And then we'll also have some other items like approval or moving forward to Council for approval for like the software hardware maintenance agreements. But that's kind of how it works. So you'll be approving the totality of the draft proposed budget. And if there's any amendments or anything like that.
If there's any amendments, it happens real time, and the final recommendation and motion will take those amendments into account?
Correct.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Does the council have any questions of the budget director? Seeing none?
I guess I have one question here.
Go ahead.
At the very beginning of the packet, they talk about strategic goals, they talk about operational strategic priorities and council retreat outcomes. Is there going to be a part of the presentation that talks about how you address these issues in the budget?
So as we go through the department presentations, that's where you'll see items that would address those issues being approved or being incorporated into their departmental budgets. So as we go through public safety or fire or CED would be another one for the promoting of the was it economic vitality, I believe it was. So you'll see those as we go through the presentations.
Okay.
Any further questions of council? Okay. Seeing none, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'm closing public comments and ask the Finance Committee for further comments.
Oh, thank you.
Seeing none, and now I ask for final comments by council. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the Police Department.
No, thank you.
Well, good evening, committee chair and committee members. Brandon Gillespie, police chief. It's an honor to be the police chief here in the city of Modesto and a privilege to kick off the department director and department budget presentations. So some of this will be I see me. There we go.
1 second.
Some of this, the beginning of these first few slides will probably just be a refresher for you, but any members of the public, it's important just to kind of give an overview of what the department looks like. There was a change last year that I'm excited. I want to make sure that everybody remembers. And I think we're there. Oh, it wants to turn. There we go. Oh, went too far. Hit the button too many times. Let's try it once.
Department overview? Yeah. One more.
One more. I knew it was going to do that. There we go. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. We're going. So the police department, one change that we made last year and we were able to do with the Measure H money was to create a fourth division. The police department has typically had 3 divisions. Our operations division, which is our more typically referred to as our patrol divisions, all of our uniformed police officers. They handle calls for service from our community 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our investigative services division, again, more commonly known with our detective bureau, that handles all follow-up that needs to be conducted by detectives and mostly felony type of crimes. And then our support division, which is commonly referred to as our records division, that is against 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and really provides the backbone of all the logistics to make sure our department is operating efficiently and effectively. One of the things that we were able to do last year is create a area command division, and that was exciting because what that is allowing us to do is we moved a lot of our specialty resources into this division to be able to allow for long-term solutions to neighborhood problems to develop. And so this division, as we'll talk about more throughout the presentation, is really a conglomerate of all these different resources. Our traffic unit, our animal control unit, our chat team, our heart team, our crime reduction team, all of these now fall under one division so that we can address various crime and quality of life issues throughout the city. When you look at our department priorities for the upcoming fiscal year, our main 3 priority goals remain the same, and they've been consistent for several years. The first goal is reduce crime and the fear of crime within our city. Another goal is to increase community engagement, and our third major overarching goal is to promote organizational excellence. When you go back up to reduce crime and the fear of crime, these are just, we have a lot of goals under each one of these, but I wanted to highlight just some of the main goals up here. Reducing crime, we continue to see crime drop in our city year after year, and so a goal that we have is to reduce overall crime by 10%. We all know that fatal traffic accidents and DUIs are a problem in our city. And another goal that we have is reduce fatal and DUI collisions by 10%. And then mentioning the area command again, we really want to expand the area command division to address quality of life and neighborhood issues, and we're well on our way to do that, as you'll see in some of the further discussion will be in. Increasing community engagement, youth. We're involved in all kinds of youth activities. We want to continue to focus on our youth and the engagement we have there with our police officers, increase partnerships and crime prevention programs, and that started to happen last year when we brought back a crime prevention supervisor, civilian supervisor, and then enhance opportunities for community relationships and building. And then promoting organizational excellence and just all that we do with our training and different things like that really round out the three main priorities that we have as a department. When you look at our organizational chart, you can see this is just those four divisions broken down from me all the way to the bottom. And really what I want to point out here is if you look at those little icons, those little circle icons, those are the wonderful paid for by Measure H icons that everybody is so familiar with. And that is, those are the divisions or the units that were affected by our Measure H adds to the police department. And just to highlight those, when we looked at our investigative services division, we were able to add 2 civilian investigators, one to our missing persons unit and one to our special crimes unit. We were able to add a civilian investigator in our traffic unit to our area command division, 8 park rangers, 3 code enforcement officers, 1 full-time maintenance worker and 3 part-time workers so that we could have another blight abatement team throughout the city, an animal control officer, police civilian supervisor in our crime prevention I mentioned just a few minutes ago, and then a lieutenant. And what that allowed us to do is create 2 area commanders. That's a lieutenant position that really split the city right now. We have 4 different areas of the city. They now oversee 2 different areas of the city each. And so those Measure H adds last year were allowed us to do that. In our field operations or our patrol division, we were able to add 15 police officer recruits and 5 CSOs. In our support division, we were able to add 1 administrative office assistant, additional part-time funding, and then along with these, we were able to add all the equipment necessary for those positions I just talked about, which were vehicles, radios, body cameras, cell phones, those types of things. When you look at the history of our staffing, this just shows a highlight of where we were since 2008, all the way up until this current coming fiscal year. And where you can see we've back in 2007, 2008, we had 287 police officers. We're currently at 211 allocated police officers. Back in that same time frame, we had about 113 non-sworn or professional staff positions, and today we're at 163. So we have a total of 373 employees in the department today. But when we look at where we are with sworn officers, we're still 76 officers less allocated than we were 17 years ago, with a population increase of well over 10,000 people. But what I want to highlight here is our philosophy. We know that nationally, we've seen it nationally over the last several years, and no doubt has still affected us, of the difficulty in getting sworn police officer positions. And everything that we can look at and forecast to the future, it shows that we're going to continue to be nationally have an issue with recruiting and retention of sworn police officers into the future. One of the things that I've advocated for, and you guys have supported, and we're seeing, and we'll talk about it, is the use of our non-sworn or professional staff to handle calls for service that don't need a police officer. My philosophy as your police chief is, if it needs a police officer, we're going to send a police officer. But if it doesn't need a police officer, then I want to send a different resource. And again, the city manager and the city council has been extremely supportive in that vision. as noted by the alternative resources that we continue to build, such as our chat team, our park rangers, our community service officers, civilian investigators. And you'll see that red line, which is the professional staff, that has continued to grow over the last several years as we continue to hire and fill the vacancy rates that we have in our police officer positions. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. When you look at our staffing by division, this is both just full-time employees, sworn and non-sworn altogether. 176 employees are in our patrol or operations division, 70 in our support division, investigations is 69, and area command is 58. Now looking at our budget, as you look through and you look at the last several years of our budget and our revenues and expenditures, really what I wanted to point out here is, and it may be obvious to most, but we're really not a revenue generating department. And for the revenues that we do bring in, we bring in a little over $3 million a year in different revenues. The main revenues that the police department brings in is revenue from Prop 172 tax from the state. We also bring in abandoned vehicle abatement fees and or fines, and that's about $200,000 to $250,000 a year. Our franchise tow fees as well, outside work agreements and reimbursed time from those types of things. Post, which is police officer standard and training reimbursements that we get from Post, the certifying agency in California. Permit fees, fines and citations, extradition reimbursements, and legal settlements make up kind of the main revenues that we bring in as a department. When you look at expenditures, really what we're looking at, and I know that we've talked about these in previous budgets, but our A's, B's, and C's is what we call them. Our A's are our salaries and benefits. Our B's are our ISS, or internal revenue service charges, and our C's are our discretionary spending, which for us makes up a lot of our contracts, our ISF fleet, and other type of software, hardware, field supplies, and things like that we need to operate as a department. Measure H funding, talked about that, but we look at the current fiscal year, we have about $5.5 million in Measure H funding from the different Measure H ads that I talked about previously on that org chart. And then when we look at police grants and such, we get about $1.5 to $2 million a year in grants. The Office of Traffic Safety is a major part of the grants that we receive every year. Our Burn JAG grant, our most recently, which you guys are familiar with and approved for us to accept, was our Organized Retail Theft grant. It's a 3-year grant for $6 million. And then we have a Cal VIP grant to reduce violence and youth violence, which is another 3-year grant at $2.2 million total. When we look at ARPA, we have been able to use ARPA. If you remember back in the early ARPA, we used that for our park ranger position and as well as our chat team. And then we were able to allocate and find a different funding source for our chat team. But as we have expanded our park rangers, that is what we had then used our ARPA money for. Our traffic safety fund, safety fund revenues, those are from safety fines and forfeits. A thing to remember when you look at traffic safety fund or a traffic offender fund, it can often be confusing. But the way we remember it is the traffic offender fund the traffic safety fund cannot fund people. It can only buy things. That's how we kind of remember that. And so these funds are used to purchase equipment and supplies for traffic enforcement and for traffic accident prevention. Also can be used for traffic-related maintenance and expenses. And the traffic offender fund, that revenue source is a portion of vehicle release fees from offenses such as DUI and other driving offenses. And these funds are used on the general police operations, but we also do currently fund one traffic officer and the associated expenses with that traffic officer through that fund. When you look at this next slide and the next few slides, when you look at our general fund slide and you look at the A's, B's, and C's, and you look at that, this is just all of those revenues and expenses. The top chart is revenues, the bottom chart is expenses, broken down by each of the 4 divisions. So you can see the revenues top slide, expenses is the bottom slide, but these are what are broken down of those general fund revenue and expenses on the main slide that I showed you, just broken down by division. These are the grants, same thing, the grants that we bring in. This is just that same slide. And what I talked about where we bring the grants in for, this is also just broken down by division. And the same thing with our traffic safety fund revenue and expenses, broken down by division. And same thing with the traffic offender fund. And really, I'll go back to this one, but this traffic offender fund, when you'll see some of this with the area command division. We had to move the allocation of bodies around. So like in the top revenue, and then you'll see the associating expense down in area command at the bottom. That is what funds that traffic officer and the supplies and the motorcycle and things like that come along with that traffic officer. That's why you see it kind of was up in the operations division, and once we moved the traffic unit to our area command, that's why you see that associated dollar amount move over. And the same thing with ARPA. ARPA, our park rangers moved over to the area command division, so from our investigations divisions where they were originally housed, and so you see that movement here. And then the Measure H, same thing. This is just a breakdown of where that Measure H, $5.6 million, is allocated by division. So the impact on Measure H has been really positive and impactful for our police department, and I believe only going to keep getting better. And I'll talk about some of the benefits, but I'll talk about where we're going in the future as well. So the Area Command and Alternative Response Unit has really been a focus of the Measure H money. And we were able to add this last year 4 park ranger positions, the blight abatement team that I talked about, the animal control officer, a crime prevention civilian supervisor, and a lieutenant to make 2 lieutenants for our area command division. And what this is allowed is just, again, we just had a town hall meeting this last week for our area, first town hall meeting in several years. But it was really focused on our area command division, explaining what that does. And so with our park rangers and adding 4, we're not there yet, and that's the struggle in what we do as a police department, having to background people, having to, if it's a police officer, put them through academy. If it's even a professional staff, put them through a training program. It takes time. And so we have 12 park ranger positions allocated. 4 were added with Measure H, and we're not there yet, but we've already seen the impact, and you'll see in some further slides about the data to show that our non-sworn or our professional staff are handling more and more calls as we build these resources up. So in our patrol division, the same thing. We were able to add 5 community service officers, 3 civilian investigators, which that's important because we're able to take sworn resources and put them back where it needs to be sworn officers, such as our patrol division. And then we were able, and we're in the phases right now of improving our downtown video camera improvements to improve safety and connect to our real-time crime center with that money that was allocated as well. So here's some charts just to show, and really if you look at the bottom line, this is our calls for service handled by professional staff is the green line at the bottom. And this is a combination of community service officers, animal control officers, park rangers, and our chat team, our outreach specialists. And you can see back in 2021, about 5,000 calls were handled, and we're up to over almost 8,200 calls that they handled in 2023. Our police officers, now I will say that our calls for service in general have been going down, but our officers are handling less calls for service, which is a benefit because they're able to go remain available for priority 1 calls, but then also remain available to do proactive enforcement, to drive down crime and detect crime, and that's really important. Officers going call to call to call, you miss a huge part of proactive enforcement, which is important in identifying, detecting, and deterring crime. The next slide here, again, shows by the top of responder for our non-sworn resources. So orange is CSOs and animal community service officers, animal control officers, that top line. You have our outreach specialists, which is that blue middle line, and then our park rangers. And again, the reason you're not seeing a huge significant increase there is because you remember we started out this as a pilot program with our cadets. And once we kind of proved that proof of concept and the council approved more park rangers, we've been in a hiring process. Our cadet position is often a feeder program into our officer position. So what was happening at the very first year or so is we're hiring people as park rangers, and then they want to become police officers. And so we don't keep them very long, and we're in this constant cycle of hiring them. There's some adjustments coming to that position, and we've solidified some of the job specs, and we know that very soon it's going to be even a more attractive position. We're going to have people that stay here longer as a career, and then we're going to see that. And as we fill the 12 positions, we know we're going to see just a huge jump in that calls for service. And then finally, the last slide that I want to show is just the non-sworn calls handled by priority level. So if you look at priority 1 calls, a CSO, a community service officer, can be dispatched sometimes to an accident, injury accident call, things like that. So there are very few, not many, but very few priority 1 calls that a non-sworn resource will respond to. But then if you look at priority 2, which is a little bit more serious call, priority 1 call is the highest priority call. It's usually some type of threat to immediate threat to life or property. And then the priority as it goes higher, the severity or the criticalness of that call goes down. So it's important when you look at priority 3 and you look at the different priority calls, especially priority 3 calls, that's a lot of times where we see calls hold for hours on end because our police officers are tied up on priority 1 and 2 calls. Our non-sworn resources, the limited ones that we've had before, are tied up on other calls. So these non-critical calls will hold for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time. And so as we increase our professional staff and these alternative resources, what we believe we're going to continue to see is our waiting times go down, our pending times for these calls, faster response times, and our officers will be able to respond quicker and be available for the calls that they need to be available for. Hope that makes sense. So the Measure H adjustments for this coming fiscal year that we've requested, our real-time crime center is proven to be a critical component of our crime reduction efforts by detecting, deterring crime throughout our city. And just we continue to maximize the technology that's used in there, but really what we haven't been able to do up until this point is to really staff it appropriately so that we can use that technology in the most effective manner possible. So what we're asking for is the addition of 3 police technicians, and those are non-sworn resources that are actually in there operating the cameras, that are being able to view the cameras, get on the radio, let officers know what is going on, respond to those. They can also call, we call them reporting parties, but citizens back that have called in calls for service, get updates. It's just really a symbiotic relationship between our officers, our real-time crime center, and all the other resources that we have. So we only have 1 in there right now, so it's not even 7-day-a-week coverage. What our hope is to have, and if you're familiar with our patrol, they work on 4 days on, 4 days off. So we have 2 squads, an A and a B squad. We want 2 technicians on one half of the patrol squad and 2 on the other. So you actually have 7-day-a-week coverage in our real-time crime center, which we currently don't have. Along with that, having those resources, somebody who's an expert, someone who's scheduling, someone who's doing the training, make sure that all of those technicians are up to speed, that they're trained well, that they can operate, the equipment's working. We need to have a senior police technician that can run all of that. So those are the 4 positions that we're asking for. We currently have a police civilian manager that we have underfilled, working in the real-time crime center, but we need to clean that up and add that position officially. But that is a civilian position that really runs at a command staff level and takes care of all of new technology, of talking to vendors and all that type of stuff in our real-time crime center. 5 code enforcement officers. We currently have 7 code enforcement officers. 3 or 4 of them are in training right now. So we're excited to get them out and about, but we know, and looking at all the calls that come in for code enforcement, and their call volume, and we have an ordinance, our vacant building ordinance that we still need to get our heads wrapped around. 7 code enforcement officers is just not enough for a city our size. So we are requesting an additional 5 code enforcement officers that will really enhance our staffing, allow us to effectively manage the rising demands of all the quality of life issues that I know I get emailed about and you get emailed about, and that our community wants us to deal with on a daily basis. Additionally, two additional police civilian investigators. Again, it goes towards my philosophy of let's put police officers where we need them. We still need police officers in our investigations division, but in areas like our special victims units that deal with a lot of special crimes such as child molestation and domestic violence and things like that, we do need, and we have some police officers in there, but we also, civilian investigators can be a huge benefit when you have the right civilians in there to be able to help investigate these type of crimes. And we have one in there currently, and I believe that a second one will be a benefit. And at a time where it's my priority, and I know the council's priority, is to put officers in our patrol division, in our traffic unit, and things like that to drive down where I need police officers. That's where adding the civilian investigator position to me makes a lot of sense. So we're asking for 2. One would go in our special victims unit, and the other one would go in our high-tech unit. So there's a lot, as we know, a lot of crime is committed via electronics and technology type of equipment, and we are constantly utilizing and downloading computers and phones for child pornography and all different types of stuff, and it's absolutely critical that we have the right resources to do that. But again, we don't need a police officer, we don't need 2 police officers to do that. So an empty position we have right now we'd like to fill, but the police civilian investigator, in my opinion, is the way to go about doing that. The design of our area command, creating an area command division has been awesome, but we need to actually reconfigure one of our buildings to house all of these resources we got together more appropriately. So one of the asks is for $150,000 to be able to design that area command area that we're going to do some resource shifting around, but then also do a design for our MPD lobby. We want to make sure that as we utilize technology and our citizens are coming into our front lobby, that it's a much more inviting, friendly place to be. So it will, the design here, or the ask here, is for that $150,000 to be able to design what that, design some reconstruction of our operations building for our area command division and our front lobby as well. And then the equipment and vehicles that go along with those positions for our code enforcement officers. They're going to need trucks, radios, computers, cell phones, all the things like that that need to go along. And almost done. Finally, transfer the funding for 4 existing park rangers over to Measure H. That is currently in ARPA, and that ARPA funds are running out. And so to maintain those positions, we need to transfer those positions over to Measure H. And then also our contract increase. One of the things that the council graciously adopted and allowed us to do was renew a new Axon contract, and with that was moving to our Taser 10, which we believe is going to be a very effective, less lethal tool for our officers. But that increase amount was $383,000, and so we're asking that increase amount be moved over to Measure H as well. Non-Measure H adjustments, Steve mentioned it, but we have a range regional training facility that is currently used by the Modesto Police Department. It's also used by the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department, the Lathrop Police Department, and Fish and Game. Last year we redid kind of how we bring in revenue, and now we charge other agencies to use that on a per-day basis. And so we believe that our estimated revenue in the coming fiscal year will be about $94,000 in revenue, but we don't have anybody out there. We currently have a building maintenance supervisor that is doing the maintenance and doing all the upkeep for all of the entire police department, our evidence unit, and the range. And really, we need to make sure that is a maintained place that is operating smoothly, everything's working, so that we continue to bring in revenue and other agencies want to use it. So with the offsetting revenue, it's about $25,000 net impact to the general fund, non-Measure H. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Does the Finance Committee have any questions of the Police Chief?
I do. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I do have a question on the priority 3 calls.
Yes.
You have 4,100 of them. Do we have a program where we call back the callers, let them know what the update is, if they've been waiting for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, to give them some information that we just have a lot of calls out there and we're just having a hard time getting to them?
Yeah, it is definitely an area where I think there could be a lot of improvement. Our call takers at dispatch are able, or dispatchers able to call our citizens back, but that's really on a judgment call. There's not a protocol in place that says after 20 minutes or after 30 minutes that we call back and give an update. I will tell you that our real-time crime center is starting to do that more and more because we have staff in there that also tries to take reports over the phone. They look at what can be handled over the phone so we can give people better service and call them back. And sometimes they will call them back after 30 minutes to give an update or see if they can take it over the phone. But I think to your point, we have a mantra that every citizen that calls the police department when our officers are handling calls, even if it's like a be on the lookout, we have a little saying that says every RP gets a call back. We issue our officers phones. We want everybody to give them a call back, even if they've disposed that call without ever having to go out on scene. But to your point, I do think that we can improve in the area of calling people back while their call is still pending.
Yeah, and I get some complaints. People call the police department for issues, but they never hear a call back.
Yep.
So, and I know that, you know, you can see the numbers. The officers are swamped out there. And I think it's important that almost every call gets a call back to let them know the status or make sure they still need the officer out there.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yeah, and I think between coordinating more with our dispatch center and having our real-time crime center do that, I think we can achieve that.
Great, thank you.
Any other, you have a question?
Yeah, I
Yes.
do.
Go
Real
ahead.
quick. Thank you. And I don't know, Chief Gillespie, if this is a you question or if this is a Christian question, but under Christian's presentation, he, under the category public safety, your proposed Measure H spend isn't as much as the total is here. So what makes up public safety in this category? Is it?
I might have to defer on Steve on that, but if his is higher, then that's the one I'd like to go with.
Some of the additional variances you'll see there for things that are categorized as public safety, but they might be in parks, like there's security of the park sites and things like that. So that's what's increasing. That's why you see a difference between the two. Yeah, fire as well.
A gamut of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
But all of those will total up to the number you see on the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
I thought I was getting an increase, but I guess not.
Any further questions?
Just kidding, Joe.
I have a question, Chief.
Yes.
On Sky One, are the expenses embedded in somewhere I didn't see?
Yeah, so the expenses, the operating expenses are going to be in our operations division. So our air support unit comes out of our cost center of our operations division. So I don't think it's called out specifically in here, although you will see, and we use some of our traffic safety money to pay for that. So
Would
you'll
we
see
be able to see it line item?
Sure, I can. Yeah, we can do that in follow-up.
And you had mentioned one time when we first got Sky One, how many patrol vehicles is equivalent to the airplane up in the sky?
My air marshal expert is in the back of the room, but I think it's, how many is it, Ivan?
I think somebody's,
During regular patrol, it's 6.
Personnel, not vehicles.
You're saying with the airplane in the air, it takes the place of so many
Six
vehicles on the
people.
ground?
6 patrol.
So it's 6 people during regular patrol. It's equivalent to 21 officers on the ground where we're searching for somebody, a missing person or somebody that's fled from police.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly successful air support unit, and as was mentioned, we put some social media out there about the DUI offenders. It's been able to help apprehend and locate vehicles and in-progress crimes. It's been a huge benefit.
Very good. Does the council have any questions for the police chief?
I do.
Mayor?
I do. One question, the Real-Time Crime Center, and I'm almost hesitant to ask this, but is it open 24/7?
It is not staffed 24/7. So right now, it's probably staffed about 7 a.m. to probably 6 p.m. in that area. We have our police civilian manager. We have our police tech that I talked about, which is just one right now. And then we have a few light duty officers, and then we have some CSOs that are in there. So it's staffed with a variety of people. It's not our CSO, or sorry, our crime police tech who's in there. While he's in there, he's just operating the cameras, assisting patrol officers, looking for when we get license plate reader hits for stolen vehicles. His primary job is to make sure that he's using those cameras to help effectively be a force multiplier for our officers on the ground. But we do have other staff in there that is taking police reports over the phone, monitoring the calls for service, but is not operated 24 hours a day.
So with
or
this,
not 7 days a week either.
all right, is that the goal?
Yes.
With the new
So I don't know that we'll get
funding?
to, even with this, we won't get to 24 hours a day, but we will be 7 days a week, and it will be in the neighborhood of 6, 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. midnight.
Does it operate at night in the dark?
It can, absolutely, yeah. All of our cameras and such, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'm now going to open it to the public. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comments. Ask Finance Committee for any further comments. Seeing none, I'll ask the council any further comments. Seeing none, we'll now go to our next agenda item, which is the fire department.
Good evening, committee. Good evening, council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
Thank you.
Before I get started, I want to thank my staff for helping me in presenting this budget this year with our new position that was created out of Measure H last year, our public safety business analyst, which has been an incredible help during this budget process. I'm going to do my best to not lose my throat as I might lose it tonight, so I'm going to do my best to move forward and power through this. So the Modesto Fire Department, okay, overview of the fire department. The fire department is built essentially on 3 pillars. It's our emergency operations, our community risk reduction and fire prevention, and our business operations. Emergency operations is to provide our core emergency services for our community. That's our fire engines, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's our daily response, 24/7, 365. Community risk reduction. This was a new division created a few years ago to encompass fire prevention and community risk reduction all within one division, as they are closely related through engineering, education, and enforcement. Business operations. This is the backbone of the fire department. This provides our logistical support, administrative support, and assists all of our divisions so they can meet their goals. They oversee personnel matters, including promotions, workers' comp, etc. The department continues to operate 365, as I mentioned, and with that, our business operations supports our operations and our community risk reduction for those goals. As you know, in 2019, we entered our first contract for service with the City of Oakdale and the Oakdale Fire Protection District. This was part of our regionalization model. These first contracts were full-service contracts that were good for 3 years and have since expired and been renewed for a 5-year contract. And as you can see, they are coming up due in 2027. Then later came the City of Ceres for a full-service contract in 2021. Then Stanislaus Consolidated and the City of Turlock agreed to administrative contracts where we provide oversight of their department while they stay intact with their own labor group, unions, and contracts. And then Salida Fire Protection District was a full-service contract that we took over. And then last fall, we entered in a unique partnership with the Regional Fire Training Center to oversee their fire technology and their EMS program. What's not listed in this contract for services and services that we provide is the Modesto Series Fire Protection Agency that oversees the old industrial fire protection district in South Modesto. Our department priorities and our goals. Service level to the community. As you know, we've been aggressively expanding our ALS program, and with your support and assistance, we've been putting as many paramedics on duty each day as possible. We continue to collaborate with our partners and, collaborate with our partners and explore future regional opportunities. And you can see that with our recent Modesto Junior College contract. We're looking at anything and everything to help provide a better service to our citizens. For our employees, health and welfare of our employees is of utmost importance. We want to maintain our staffing levels, which we've been very aggressive in filling positions so we can keep those positions filled. We've been very aggressive with our promotions to make sure that we're filling all positions. We have a behavioral health program that we're fully supporting and a cancer reduction program that we are supporting. Critical infrastructure. As you know, Station 1 project has been in the works for many years. I'm proud to say here in the next short time, we will be going out for an RFP for an architect for Station 1. This is one of my highest administrative priorities. And as we'll see later in the budget presentation about our damaged station, our stations, we need to keep the upkeep on the stations, and that report's going to be coming out later in the budget process. Our organizational chart. Thank you. If you look at our organizational chart, this organizational chart encompasses all of MST. So this is our full administrative charts. One of our main priority goals as MST in our contracts is operating as one and find those efficiencies. And if you look at this chart, first, the ones highlighted in yellow are funded through Measure H. But many of these positions in here, and if I had to go back, I would have liked to have highlighted them for you. It would have made it much easier to see which positions were which. But this encompasses all three in each of our support divisions, from community risk reduction, operations, and then our contracts and our business operations. And you can see by working together, we have a very robust staff. And I'm going to talk further about that later when I report out on our divisions. Department staffing. You can see for the last 10 years, our fire suppression in light blue has been very consistent from 138 to 137, where we're at today. And then you can see on the bottom, when the contracts came into play, the Oakdale, Ceres, Salida, and grant-funded positions and non-sworn positions. This table shows our currently staffed filled positions. Again, you can quickly see the fire suppression for the City of Modesto and then the breakdowns of Oakdale, Ceres, and our other contracts. You can also see our fire investigation units and our fire prevention unit and our training division as well. Fire department revenues and expenditures. You can see over the last 5 years where our revenues are and our expenditures are and how they correlate with the contracts for service. The revenues for 24-25 are slightly down, and what we have done is we have gone through our budget and we have looked at the performance of our budget in the last 5 years, and we really wanted to reflect what we're actually receiving. So you're going to see, that's why you see the slight dip in revenues in the 24-25. However, our contracts continue to go up to be commensurate with the cost of those contracts. Our operational division is very reflective of what our overall operating projections look like. It's basically the same looking graph as they correlate mostly because this is our largest expense. Again, you can see the revenues over expenditures. These revenues are from our contracts for service. And of course, we have our ongoing costs related to PPE, supplies, fuel, and labor. As you know, those costs keep increasing each year. This is our business operations division, revenue over expenditures. Take note of the 21-22, you see the big jump in revenue. That's when we did a lease purchase for 5 fire engines. Community risk reduction, again, revenues over expenditures. We tried to reflect our revenues for exactly what we had coming in and try to be as close to that as possible. And when I do my division report, you'll see that we're doing more and more inspections. So we're hoping to increase those revenues as we grow over the next few years. Impacts on Measure H. Additional positions that we were able to create through Measure H has been the hazmat inspector, 3 EMS captains, a public safety service analyst, to help improve our efficiencies in our respective areas. So in operations, that is to provide better response times. With the addition of the hazmat inspector, enhance inspection capabilities, and greater fiscal oversight and office management. So this graph depicts first quarter for the last 3 years. As you can see, with the additional inspector, plus filling the other inspector positions, and by utilizing our MST inspectors as working as one department, in the first quarter in 2024, we've already been able to complete 1,218 inspections. As you can see, that has been a great improvement over 22 and 23. And with the hazmat inspector, those are very complex inspections, and that's been really helping with the needs of the community. This page shows our advanced life support, our current response times. Currently, every day in the City of Modesto, we have Engine 1, Engine 2, Engine 5, and Engine 9 staffed with a paramedic. However, through Measure H last year, we were able to outfit every fire engine and every truck company in the City of Modesto with ALS equipment. What that has allowed us to do is, if we have a paramedic who's assigned to that apparatus for the day, to work as a paramedic. Most days, we have 6 to 7 units that are ALS capable because of that equipment purchase. First on scene, fire versus ambulance. This is really important. We're able to provide life-saving measures, as you can see, over the last 3 years. We're on scene before the ambulance 63, 67, and 65% of the time. Some of those response times are very delayed by the ambulance company, but I will note they have been getting better. But we're on scene many times for many minutes without an ambulance, providing those advanced life support services. Measure H adjustments. This year, our Measure H adjustments, we requested medical equipment. 6 life packs. These are used for our paramedics to provide ALS services. 6 Lucas devices. We often kid that firefighter Lucas is our firefighter of the year. Our Lucas device is what we use for CPR. This is the device that provides compressions for the patient. Before we had the Lucas device, we would have to dispatch an additional engine company to assist with CPR. So now that we have the Lucas devices, we don't need that additional engine company on those types of calls. So that's been a great addition to the department. Operative IQ, this is to help track our narcotics and equipment tracking. I used this at a previous agency where I worked, and it's a great program, and we're going to be able to use it for many things, for tracking all our narcotics, all our equipment, our PPE, our vehicle maintenance, and all our vehicle inspections. Rescue equipment, this is for our frontline operational equipment, can tools, extrication tools, rescue equipment, and medical equipment, and fireground equipment that have begun failing over the past 5 years. 2 positions that we are looking to add is a senior storekeeper and an administrative analyst position. The senior storekeeper, as large as our organization is, with our personal protective equipment and all our other equipment such as hose, ground ladders, we have over 3,600 pieces of equipment that need to be tracked, managed, tested, and ordered, and make sure that it's here in a proper time to be replaced. Just for example, a brand new firefighter right out of the academy has about $10,000 worth of PPE assigned to that firefighter, and that's not counting the other equipment that they use on their engines, including over 175 self-contained breathing apparatus that we have in service that we need to track, and they need to be tested regularly. So this position is going to oversee all that and be able to manage those and keep an inventory of everything that we have. It's a much needed position that was previously done by aligned personnel. The administrative analyst position work to serve a vital role in day-to-day financial, station maintenance, payroll tasks of the Modesto Fire Department. Station maintenance is a critical component of this position. The fire department is unique in that it provides housing for employees while on shift, which means that there is constant rotation of employees, working and living within the department, maintaining houses. Historically, the station maintenance tasks have been associated with an administrative analyst position prior to the department reorganization. The additional administrative analyst would ensure that tasks are being addressed by the employee that has the ability to and the autonomy to analyze the urgency and the priority of the efficiency of station maintenance. This also provides insight into the budget forecasting for future station needs. In 2023, there were more than 360 station maintenance requests were fielded by this, will be this position. Finally, questions? Excuse me.
Does the Finance Committee have any questions of the Fire Chief?
I do.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I do have a couple questions. Number one, explain to me what the revenue sources are.
Yeah, absolutely. So our main form of revenue source is our contracts for service. They're our largest revenue source. Also, we have fees for service that we charge for the fire prevention division. We also have our fire recovery, which we will charge for fires within the city and vehicle accidents. So we have fire recovery. And then also we provide special operations to the whole county. So we receive funding from the county to provide those services.
And since we brought on the other agencies, other cities, what is our cost savings in our administration for having the other agencies as part of our fire department?
I don't have an exact number for you, but I can tell what we've done with administrative, and you can see it in the org chart. And what we've done is we've reduced redundancies. A good example is our fire prevention division. So we brought in Stanislaus Consolidated, Turlock City, and our fire prevention division. We brought them in as one, and now we're operating as one. So we share inspectors. So if we need help with an inspection, we can pull a Turlock inspector down to help. Or we can send one of our inspectors down there to help.
And do we bill out for those inspectors that go to the different cities?
No, we will share. We share services.
Okay.
So they'll help us. We'll help them.
But our administration costs, are those billed out to the different cities?
So
we have one chief now instead of 5 different chiefs.
Yeah. So great question. So how it's structured is. So, for example, we have a deputy chief in the city of Turlock, Chief Hunter, He's also our business operations chief for the city of Modesto. So he'll work down there, and then he'll work here also, and we'll share those costs.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions okay. I do have a question or two.
Yes, sir.
The public safety business service analyst, is that shared with the police department?
No, sir. It's a similar position, but it's separate.
Okay. And the mechanics who specifically service the engines, how many do we have currently, and are you budgeting more for the mechanics?
Yes, sir, we are. We currently have one mechanic assigned to that division through the maintenance yard. There's 2 more positions in the budget that are going to be budgeted for this year. The good thing with those positions, anytime they work on one of our contract city apparatus, they're fully reimbursed with an administrative fee on top of that.
Okay. Very good, thank you. No other questions? Does the council have any questions of the police chief? Our fire chief, sorry. Seeing none, I will now open it up to the public. Would any member of the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. Ask Finance Committee for any further comments. Council members, further comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will take a 5-minute short break. The current time is 6:19, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Now we're good.
Good evening, committee, members of council. My name is Jeremy Rogers. I am your Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhoods Director. I'm going to present on my department. It's an honor to be here. First, my Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood is divided into 4 divisions: administration and facilities, park operations, parks planning and development, and finally recreation and neighborhood services. Our goals and priorities for this upcoming fiscal year, I'll read off a couple of each one, and I won't go through every one, but for administration and facilities, our #1 goal is the Parks Master Plan that's going to be presented in this budget. That's very important to our department. It's going to give us a roadmap for the next 5-10 years. Also, developing MOUs with the historical property organizations. That has never been done in the history of those properties, so it's very important that we establish a working MOU. For park operations, we're going to install new bottle filling filters. We're going to implement the second phase of Lucity. This is labor reports identifying maintenance needs in the parks. Recreation and neighborhood services, we're going to complete a safety and infrastructure improvements in recreation facilities. We're going to redefine division staffing structure to optimize operations. Parks planning and development, we're going to complete construction on the boat launch. We are also going to complete the trip master plan. Our org chart, as you can see, our org chart has grown over the last couple years. Last year we added 12 new positions to measure, because of Measure H. Those positions were in park ops and park planning. This year we're going to add 4 new park maintenance workers. Those workers will allow us to keep our park restrooms open year-round. This is staffing and by division and fund. We have 52 general fund staff, 15 Measure H staff, and 5.75 enterprise staff. That's at the Modesto Center Plaza. We'll go through and talk about revenues and expenditures by division. This first one is very similar to last year. One of the reasons for the increase in our expenses is due to the cost of living. We have a very heavy part-time staff load. Therefore, the increase in minimum wage made our expenditures go up quite a bit. Also, everything that we buy is going up. So anything we do business with, the price is going up. In the golf fund and the community center operations fund, there is very minimal change. Golf did go down. I'll elaborate that in a little bit. In the trip fund, revenue increased a hair due to the land sale to the housing authority. Revenue is decreased in fiscal year 25 because there are no land sales included. A portion of the revenue from last year is being used to cover expenditures in fiscal year 25. Now we'll go through each division and talk about revenues and expenditures. Again, in administration and facilities, expenditures are up throughout the entire division. There's a $51,000 increase to our museum expenses. I want to note this. Most of those expenditures are internal service funds. I think that's very important to note. There was a decrease in golf. I'm going to go back to the last one. Sorry, skipped ahead. There is a decrease in golf due to the payment of Creekside debt service that ended in November of 23, so we no longer have that payment. Increase in salaries at Center Plaza play a huge role in the expenditures going up there. Recreation services, in fiscal year '25, there's a decrease of $530,000 due to rearranging our part-time staffing expenditures. We took a real hard look at those, and we're going to operate within our budget this year. In fiscal year '25, revenues increased due to the Modesto City Schools after-school program. They've expanded that, so our revenues have gone up there. Park Operations and Maintenance Division. Again, internal service funds have created our expenditures to go up here. This includes tagging and abatement operations. This keeps our park operations guys very, very busy, guys and gals. Parks Planning, the higher revenues for fiscal year '24 is mostly due to the land sale of Trip last year. Measure H has had a huge impact on parks, recreation, and neighborhoods. I could be here all night talking about how it's impacted our department, but I will keep it brief for this presentation. In year one of Measure H, we replaced 8 playgrounds. We replaced tennis lights at 5 different parks. We did sand volleyball court improvements at East Loma Park. We removed the old shade canopies that were connected to the restrooms at 4 different parks. We replaced the synthetic turf at Mary Grogan Park, and then we replaced 3 restrooms throughout our park system. Also, we're doing a facility renovation to the Maddox Youth Center. Continuing on with Measure H, in year one, we on basketball and volleyball courts, we court sealed and striped 11 basketball and volleyball courts at different parks, resurfaced 5 tennis courts. We did numerous concrete repairs throughout our entire park system to make them more ADA compliant. We increased lighting at 4 different parks. And in the parking lot, we did slurry seal and stripe at the McHenry Mansion as well, the McHenry Museum and Mansion, as well as 5 different parks. Measure H adjustments for this upcoming year. The King Kennedy budget adjustment will provide needed structural repairs and facility improvements at that facility. The grant for renovations at MLK Park does not cover existing structures, so that will be nice to be able to come in and make those needed adjustments. Also in year 2, we are going to continue on the basketball and volleyball courts, resurfacing them. We're going to continue to do the concrete repairs throughout our entire park system. Continue to upgrade those security lighting as well as the parking lots. We're installing new park signs at 6 different parks, and then we've also trimmed trees at 20 different parks. Those I just talked about. Let's talk about non-Measure H adjustments. We're adding $3,500 to support the Breakfast with Santa event. This is hosted by the North Modesto Kiwanis Club. This program goes to support our leisure bucks. And that is it. I sped through that. I apologize. Any questions?
Does the Finance Committee, any members of the Finance Committee have questions of the Parks Director?
Yeah, I have one question.
Go ahead.
On Mary Grogan Park, is this turf already been replaced, or is going to be replaced?
It is going to be replaced.
It's going to be replaced. And this year, correct?
Yes.
Great.
I do have a question. Thank you for that report. In regards to your parks operation department or section, a lot of it was supported with new positions with Measure H. That's wonderful. We have approximately 75-ish parks in City of Modesto. You have assigned 15 maintenance workers, 6 of which were required with Measure H funding. 75 parks, 15 maintenance workers. What is the responsibility of a maintenance worker? Because it's different than a groundskeeper. So do they just maintain the bathrooms or the maintenance of the entire ground of the park?
They do maintenance on the restrooms, on the playgrounds, on any infrastructure within the park itself.
Okay,
sprinklers.
The groundkeeper doesn't do that?
He's involved in that, but the maintenance worker actually does the physical work. We also contract out some of our sprinklers because it's more of a specialized.
Okay, so if you have 15 maintenance workers in 75 parks, how do you divide that responsibility? How do we maintain 75 parks?
We divide and conquer, and we have our park operations are divided into 2 units, and within those units, each group of maintenance workers have certain parks that they maintain.
I see. And groundkeeper is different from a maintenance worker. Again, what does a groundkeeper do?
A groundkeeper has more certifications than a maintenance worker. A groundskeeper has the knowledge of ball field maintenance, of sprinkler, irrigation, things like that.
And you also divide the responsibility of your 3 groundkeepers to the 75 parks?
Not all groundskeepers touch the all 75 parks. Groundskeepers take care of ball field maintenance. Mostly that's the majority of their work, and they take care of softball, baseball fields, athletic courts, things like that.
I see, and not all parks have those amenities, therefore they don't
Absolutely.
service all parks.
Right.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the Finance Committee? I have a question. Grover Landscaping does the mowing, correct?
Yes, they do.
And when's their contract up again?
That I don't have in front of me. I know it goes up for renewal this year. I will find out exactly when that contract is up for renewal.
Yeah, we'll report back on that.
Yep.
Thank you. Does any council members have questions of the Director of Parks and Recreation?
I have a question. In terms of Center Plaza, I know that that's a facility that we've been struggling with for quite some time in terms of it being negative revenue kind of situation for us. What's the plan for Center Plaza? Are we trying to, how many events is it doing, for example? Is it doing per month on average?
Well, we can certainly report back on the number of events that are being held, but we're continuing to explore all the options that are available to us with respect to Center Plaza.
I just love if we're feeling like it's time to let go of this thing, that we let go.
All of that's being
Like,
evaluated at this current time, and we hope to have a recommendation sometime this year.
I guess, and that's awesome, and I love that. I love where we're going with that. That seems like a good direction. I'm just concerned because if we're budgeting for it, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, well, if we budget for it now and let's say something changes, then we'll come through in the mid-year and then make an adjustment to that budget.
So it's like we're moving in the right direction, sort of.
We are exploring all options available for us with Center Plaza.
Right and left options.
Okay. The other thing, and this, you're not going to answer this right now, but I would like to get a full list of the deferred maintenance budget and a full list of the preventative maintenance budget, because that's like $5 million, and I'd really like to have more input on what we're doing there. Thanks.
Does any other council members have any question of the director?
Let me just make a comment. We do have a deferred maintenance presentation that will come later in these workshops that'll kind of go over what all the deferred maintenance is, but we will report back on the preventative maintenance.
Thank you. Any other council?
Would that be just for parks or for the whole enchilada?
Enchilada.
It's the whole enchilada, and it's not pretty. Just, that's a preview for you.
But you'll give me one for parks? Love this place.
Any other questions by council? Seeing none, I will now open it up to the public. Would anyone in the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, close public comments. Ask Finance Committee for further comments. Seeing none, ask council for further comments. Seeing none, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the City Manager's Office. Good job, Jeremy.
It sounded like you called them germ.
Italian slang there.
That's funny.
Jeremy, you can breathe now. Are you okay? All right, just making sure. It's got to be tough when it's your first time for sure. And good job, Jeremy. All right, good evening, Finance Committee, Joe Lopez, City Manager. I'll go over our department. We have 3 main divisions within the City Manager's Office: Communications and Legislative Affairs. On the Legislative Affairs side, they do all of our legislative priorities, talking with our lobbyists as well as our local elected officials, and then manages the citywide public information, our social media site, and community outreach. The City Manager's Office, the administrative side, executes your direction. We implement the strategic plan and act as a liaison for intergovernmental affairs and provides oversight to all city departments that are non-charter officers. And then we have the budget division that manages the preparation of the budget that's before you today and forecast revenue and expenses throughout the year. Our priorities this year are fiscal responsibility, mainly with the relief funds. I will note that all of the ARPA funds need to be obligated by the end of this year and fully expended by the end of 26. That puts a particular onus on us. We will not have a chance to change any of the allocations that are being reported after this year. So we've done our diligence. We're going to present to you a revised plan. There were some items that we didn't feel like would be expended, so they're being recommended for reallocation. We'll go over that in a presentation we do later in the workshops. Fiscal sustainability of the city, we have to make sure that this sales tax measure lasts for years and decades to come, and making sure that we're meeting the obligations of our community. Homeless programs and initiative continues to be our #1 focus, working with our Community Economic Development Department, maintaining and controlling our pension liability and healthcare costs, implementation of the blight abatement strategy and our parking strategy, as well as the downtown and muni park development, pedestrian safety, that's working in conjunction with our police department to increase our traffic safety unit, as well as our engineering department to make sure that our roads are safe, as well as our implementation of our housing plan. Here is a look at our organizational chart. We have 3 FTE in our Public Relations Legislative Affairs Division, as well as 5 in the Budget Division, Steve, and then the remaining in the City Manager's Administration. Here is a look at that FTE history. I'll just note on this chart, the Communication Division became its own division for budgeting purposes in the current fiscal year, and we're just carrying that forward into 24-25. Here is a look at our revenues and expenditures. We get very little revenue. Expenditure increases are due to our salary and benefits, as well as increased ISF charges. Within the budget division, again, same thing, just increases with respect to salaries and benefits. No other major changes there. And then the communication division, this has steadily grown over the last 2 years as has been identified as a council priority in the workshop and the retreat that we did. Also, the jump from the $473,000 to the $761,000, that is due to moving the lobbyist contracts within this division. Previously, it was in another portion of the city manager's budget. It's more appropriate to be allocated within this division. Citywide organization and dues. So this is a cost center within the city manager's office budget. And this goes to pay for things like LAFCO, StanCog, League of California Cities. These are organizations that are of citywide importance. The sharp increase that you see from 267 to the 442,000, that is due to the addition of the independent police auditor as well as the expenses related to the Community Police Review Board. That's where these expenditures are housed. This right here just gives you an overview of all the expenditures within the city manager's office. Again, some of this is due to those lobbying contracts where you see the large increase in expenditures. Here is a bar graph of just seeing the steady increase. The yellow bar, that's the $100,000. That is the money that is set aside for Measure H to increase our communication platform, particularly with respect to how Measure H is impacting our community. We are proposing a slight restructure. Currently, the budget division is housed within the city manager's office, and they're responsible for the budget. We want to expand the role that the budget division plays, particularly within respect to performance management. We are a data-driven organization, and we really want to expand upon our intentionality of data and how data ties back to our budget. We will be looking at increasing our intention on our performance management piece. And then the second part is really surrounding, so that's a performance management piece. The second piece is going to be around project management. So we have a lot going on. We have a lot going on with Measure H. We have projects everywhere. And I feel like I have not done a good job of making sure we're keeping track of all these projects, making sure that they're staying on track and that they're being executed in a timely fashion. We are currently exploring whether that would be better done as a contract or through employees. So we're not actually allocating any FTE at this point in time, but we are requesting $250,000 to at least get the project management component up. As I said, it's important that we deliver on our promises to our community. We have to stay on track with what all these different projects that we're doing, and I think the project management can really assist us in getting some of those things across the line in a sooner fashion. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Okay, does the Finance Committee have any questions of the city manager?
Can you offer me an example of just the exact subject you were talking about, the proposed incorporation of a new unit, the project management? What would be an example? And can you talk through its life of what?
So, sure. How about I just pick a parks project? So we just heard from the parks director, take Cesar Chavez project. There's certain milestones that need to be hit, and I just want to make sure that I'm able to track them myself, right? And so they're housed in the parks department. They do a great job. But we want to make sure that we're tracking them, but then also communicating out what our progress is on all these things. Project management is a certain professional skill that individuals have. We would be looking for people who have project management. I can never remember the other P. It's a PMP license profession. Yes, Scotty is a PMP himself. And you will see that this will live underneath the Deputy City Manager of Support, which is currently Scotty. So we think we'll get some efficiencies within that as well.
So would that unit manager at least have a high-level view or somehow chart all the various projects that the city's working on, or just the high-level ones?
Probably not like our utilities, because they have project managers within utilities, and probably not like our streets, because usually we have construction management that's doing this. These are like, take our parking study that we've did. There's a lot of components within that parking study that still need to be implemented. We need somebody that's going to keep us on track and keep these projects moving forward and help us kind of make sure we're pointing in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
So these are just timelines that you're going to do?
Yeah. They're managing the projects and making sure that they get completed on time.
So this would include the soccer fields on the west side.
Sure.
That been funded for the last 4 or 5 years, but just haven't been put into place. That's great.
There's got to just be intentionality behind the projects that we're proposing and making sure that we're meeting the deadlines that we're saying that we're giving to you.
Great.
So it's an accountability unit?
Correct.
Okay, any further questions from Finance Committee?
I don't have any questions on this, but I do think it's a fantastic idea. It's exactly what we need, for the reasons like Councilmember Wright was saying, we have examples of that throughout. And what I think it is just cities saying like, this is a way we can do better. That's what this is all about. That's why we're here.
Any other questions or from council? Seeing none, I'll go to open up to the public. Would anyone in the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. Ask the Finance Committee for further comments. Seeing,
I have a question, actually. I'm sorry.
You're good.
And I can't find, it wasn't in Joe's presentation, but I believe that position would fall under city managers. The mayor and the council's office, that's underneath the city.
It's its own separate department and with its own cost center.
I see a position. I see a position here. It says add one executive assistant position offset with reduction in discretionary expense.
Correct. So this is adding an extra executive assistant to the mayor and council's office, and we have offset that through actually reductions in the city manager's office.
Thank you.
that's good news.
That's good news.
In my office? That's fine. That's okay, I've been in the hallway before. It's kind of nice. Any further comments by council members? Seeing none, we will now go to the next agenda item. That will be the city attorney's office. You and I can share a room. Oh, geez.
Good evening, committee and council. Jose Sanchez, city attorney, and I'll be presenting our budget. If I could,
Try it again. See,
there we go. And I always drive Joe crazy because I say, you know, when we get to priorities, I always tell him, well, I should just put my name on all your priorities as far as city manager, every department, the council, because really the council's priorities are staff's priorities, which are my priorities, to make sure they get done. But he still said I had to do a PowerPoint. So here we are. The city attorney's office, who we are. And the reality is we are the office in charge of basically making sure that everything the city does follows the law and that we accomplish things in a legal manner, but also as creative as possible. But still following all the rules and regulations. We draft everything kind of that you see, all the legal documents, or assist in drafting, such as the ordinances, the resolutions, the leases, a lot of paperwork that goes through our office, the agenda, all the agenda material goes through our office as well, and we're in charge of making sure that all that looks proper. We also appear in court. We appear in court in both criminal and civil matters, and we also manage all the litigation for the city. We deal with, and you'll hear a lot in the next presentation, public records requests. We deal with a lot of those, subpoenas for records, and any type of request made by members of the public. When we talk about quality of life issues, our office is very much involved in assisting the police departments and other folks, the code enforcement department, in enforcing laws. One of our tasks is to do administrative appeal requests, to process those and actually do hearings when different violations are issued. We prosecute. Actually, we go to court, prosecute criminal violations of our municipal code and state law, including the ones that often come up, right? The crimes involving, let's say, the housing and building codes violations or business license codes. We also obviously take a look at other types of violations like blight, which are very important, obviously, for the council. Our priorities, and looking at the priorities, aside from obviously all the goals of the council and of staff being our priorities as well, we always want to make sure that we're looking at kind of and collaborating with staff and looking at what the council, I can't stress enough, your goals, your direction, that's really ours as well, to assist in making sure we accomplish that. We also want to provide training to staff when possible. There's a lot of issues that come up that we want to be involved in and provide training for staff. We also want to assist different departments with kind of the day in, day out kind of operations and the tasks that they have. And of course, as I mentioned, community prosecution. One thing you heard from the police chief is a lot more officers, a lot more code enforcement officers. What all of that means is a lot more citations issued, a lot more reasons for us to go to court and also hold administrative hearings. We want to make sure that we support staff and the city in that. Still, our priority every year is as well to manage our resources. We look at our budget, and what you'll see when I propose the numbers is we're not asking for a lot of increases. I'll go into that in more detail, but managing our resources is always a priority of ours. And also enhancing communication, finding ways in collaboration, finding ways in order and for us to participate in, obviously, and with staff, collaborate with staff, but also the members of the public and businesses, and seeing how our office can also be kind of part of the community. The org chart for the city attorney's office. Of the city attorney, we actually have an assistant city attorney, a prosecuting deputy city attorney. We also, from Measure H in red, we have a deputy city attorney. We have several folks providing advice attorneys on different matters. We also have 2 paralegals. One of them is also the office manager, an administrative office assistant, and a legal secretary also. That was one of our Measure H asks the funding for that position. As far as FTEs go, our FTEs for the office, the full-time employees, are only 6. They are the 2 deputy city attorneys, our paralegal, our office manager, our other paralegal, administrative office assistant, and the legal secretary. So again, we only have 6 FTEs, but we're able to provide the other members of that team and other expertise through your agreement with my law firm. As far as our city attorney revenues, really, we don't keep track of the revenues we assist the city in getting as far as with administrative hearings or in other manners as far as cost recovery. What we do track are what's called direct charge agreements. Those are usually with departments like enterprise fund departments that have their own funding, like water, sewer, that a lot of members from the office actually work on those projects, like are part of our FTEs that do work for them. Well, the general fund pays them, and the direct charge, what the direct charge does is make sure that those enterprise funds pay for the work that they are getting from those employees. City Attorney's Office, our expenditure of the general fund. We also have the A's, the B's, and the C's. The A's being the salaries and benefits for employees. They've stayed pretty flat as far as 2023-24 and 2024-25 are proposed. They are pretty close. The increases being as far as for salary and benefits, increases there, raises or whatnot that are calculated there. Same thing with the ISFs, our B's refer to that. Those are also increases not through kind of personnel, but more costs going up for the city. The discretionary stays pretty close to where we were last year as far as the proposed. As you can see, last year was a little over 1.1. I'm sorry, we have 1.1 for the C's. It's still over 1.1, around the same ballpark for this proposed budget. Our total for all A, B, and C's for the city attorney's budget are pretty close, with the slightly under the $2 million mark. For Measure H, we did have, as I mentioned, those 2 positions in the org chart. for our legal secretary and our deputy city attorney that were from Measure H last year, and same positions being covered for this year coming. As far as the impacts on Measure H, they are focusing on the quality of life issues. Both positions were really added in order to support that aspect of our office and assisting with quality of life matters. Our additional deputy city attorney, the position does allow for an increased prosecution, the workload to be handled as more police officers are there, more citations are being issued, more reason to go to court. And this attorney helps with that, making sure we cover all those violations such as illegal dumping, graffiti, abatement, blight, nuisance conditions, all those that are very important to our residents. Our additional legal secretary, paid for by Measure H, assists that position, and our current deputy city attorney, who also does these functions. Here are some of the graphs as far as the just showing as far as prosecution and administrative hearing cases, how many we've seen from the increase of the 2022-2023 to this current year. You can see the jump. It's been quite a bit. I'm pretty sure by the end of the fiscal year we will have doubled what happened last year with the different administrative or this prosecution and administrative hearing cases. As far as the requests go, the requests for budget increase, we're not putting any requests really for an increase in budget other than the two positions that are still being paid, but no real requests are given. However, I will tell you that we will track all of the projects that we do as staff also comes and tries, with the goals of doing more projects and accomplishing more things. We want to make sure we're involved in all of that, but with that, there may be increases to the budget. Hopefully not, knock on wood. We'll be able to do everything under our current budget, but if for some reason a lot of projects are happening, we would come back at mid-year budget or before that to let the council know here's where we are, here's the projects we've accomplished, if for some reason there's any need for an increase. Happy to answer any questions.
Does Finance Committee have any questions of the city attorney?
I don't.
Seeing none, does the council have any questions of the city attorney?
Just one question on the increased hearings. What do you attribute that to?
The increased hearings and the increased prosecution, going to court really with more police officers. You also have more citations being issued. Also, the police department is very focused, and I don't want to talk for the chief, but also very focused quality of life issues that
say no more.
Increases.
Amen. Yes. So NPU moving over might have a big impact too. That's awesome. That's good news. That's actually good money.
I just have a comment. It seems, you have 6 staff, but it seems, I firsthand experience, it seems like there's 30 people. Your production capabilities is through the roof, just with 6 staff, so my hat's off to your department, and you at the helm of that department that's producing great work, and efficient work too.
Any other questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, going to open it up to the public. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comments and ask Finance Committee if they have further comments.
Thank you for your report.
And council, further comments? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is the city clerk.
Good evening, Finance Committee, council members, staff, and public. I'm Diana Yaris Perez, your city clerk. And this evening, I'll be presenting an overview of the city clerk's proposed budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. We will begin with an overview of the services the city clerk provides. The city clerk supports mayor, council, staff, and the public by offering the following services, and they're broken up in 3 different divisions. or service areas. The first one is the city clerk's office. City clerk is responsible for agenda management of city council and council standing committee meetings. City clerk also attends and records the city council meetings and standing committees and prepares those minutes. Last year, city clerk and staff attended 79 meetings and posted those agendas and processed the minutes. City clerk also serves as the agent of service for all claims, summons, subpoenas, and administrative appeals received. Last year, there was a total of 642 that were received. City clerk is also responsible for auditing fiscal transactions, such as accounts payable, ACH, e-payables, and also audits the payroll. Last year, city clerk conducted 235 audits. City clerk also maintains the city charter and the municipal code. So in essence, what that means is once council approves an ordinance, the city clerk makes sure that that is published in accordance with our city municipal code, and also make sure that it gets codified or incorporated into our online code so the public is aware of all the local laws that you guys have, council has passed. City clerk also administers the oath of office for elected officials, planning commissioners, BZA members, and new employees. City clerk also serves as the filing officer for the Political Reform Act, which means we notify those designated officials, which is council and certain designated staff, about their statement of economic interest, known to you all as 700 forms. Also, we make sure that campaign statements are filed on a timely basis by the elected officials and candidates. City clerk also publishes legal notices in compliance with our municipal code and any local laws and regulations, such as a notice of public hearings, bid openings, and also we make sure that the ordinances that council adopts are published appropriately. City clerk also serves as the designated official, in essence, such as the city's custodian of records to receive Public Records Act requests. We work closely with the city attorney on responding to those requests. Last year, we processed and received 850 public records requests. City clerk also serves as as mentioned earlier, the records manager, aka custodian of records. So we make sure that all records are preserved and maintained in compliance with our records retention schedule. Second aspect of the city clerk's office is elections. City clerk serves as the election official for city council and the Modesto City School Board. That's mandated by the elections code and our city charter. Third area of service is mail services. Mail services sorts, meters, and delivers mail throughout city departments at approximately 14 different locations. I won't read them to you all, but some of them are Maddox, Neighborhood Center at Marshall Park, MPD, PD, and those other areas. They process an average of about 8,500 pieces of metered mail and deliver about 14,000 pieces of mail from the post office on a monthly basis. The duties of the city clerk are mandated by the city charter, municipal code, Brown Act, elections code, Public Records Act, state law, and the Political Reform Act. Next slide is department priorities and or goals for 2024, 2025. The city clerk strives to maintain high quality and efficient services for the mayor, council, staff, and more importantly, the public as well. One of the main goals is to conduct a November 5th, 2024 general municipal election with integrity, precision. There will be 3 council seats on that ballot for districts 1, 3, and 6, and 3 school board seats, trustee areas 2, 4, and 6. That nomination period opens July 15th and will close on August 9th. Even though July is a few months away, the city clerk is actively working on preparing all the materials to be ready for the nomination period. One of the other goals of the city clerks is to maintain compliance or 100% compliance with the Brown Act, which means timely posting of all of the council agendas, which in essence is making sure the agendas are posted 72 hours before a regular meeting and 24 hours before a special meeting. One of the main projects that we're also working on is it's called Project ScanSnap, and that's preserving the city's history by scanning and providing access to the city's official legislative records, and we place those records online for greater access to the public and historicability, but also sharing our historical records with the public. Currently online for the public's viewing are rezos dating back to 1911 and minutes dating back to 1884. That was slated as a 5-year project. We're currently on year 4, and we still have some ordinances left to scan. Continuing on to the city clerk's office priorities and goals is to continue to remain up to date on election laws and legal updates year round. And again, that's working closely with the city attorney to make sure that we're kept up to date on any new regulations that affect the services that the city clerk provides. Offer training and support for staff on utilizing the Zoom room, which is the room that you normally have your council standing committee meetings. City clerk somehow has become the expert on using the Zoom room, and we work with staff on training them how to use the equipment in there. One additional priority is provide proper cross-training for staff and working on the professional development and certification. I'm currently a certified municipal clerk and working toward my master municipal clerk. I have Dana Sanchez, the assistant city clerk, that's working toward her certified municipal clerk certification, and then I'm hoping that the deputies follow suit, and then my goal is also to have the deputies certified in records management. An additional priority is upgrade the city's on-base agenda management system. That's the agenda management system we use for posting the agendas and processing items. That is several years outdated, hasn't been updated in some time, so currently there is a stakeholders group that has been formed through various contacts throughout the city, and we're hoping to look at that and evaluate and hopefully upgrade and or replace for more efficiency. One of the other goals in mail services is developing a standards operating procedures for mail services to provide coverage for mail services. We have 2 staff members that are our mail services staff. However, they work in very close quarters and share those quarters with county staff. And if one person gets sick, the other one tends to get sick as well. So we want to make sure that there's no disruption in mail services. In the past, it doesn't happen often, but we have had to close like mail services for the afternoon because one was sick and someone else had an appointment. So we are working, developing that operating procedure, and the 2 deputy city clerks right now are training alongside with mail services staff, so there's no disruption in the mail services. So in essence, the city clerk's primary aim is to deliver efficient customer service to council, staff, and the public, ensuring trust, transparency, and overseeing the legislative process while ensuring compliance with all local laws and regulations. Next slide is the city clerk's org chart and department staffing. City clerk's org chart consists of the city clerk, which is myself, Diane. I serve as one of the 4 charter officers. In the city clerk's division, we have 1 assistant city clerk, Dana Sanchez, who has been with the city 8 years. Andrea Cook, deputy city clerk, who's been in the city clerk's office in the city 4 years. And then thanks to Measure H and council's approval, we have an additional position, 1 deputy city clerk, and that would be Reina Mendoza, who has been with the city 5 months. Under mail services, we have 2 AOA 1/2 positions. Aurora Jacobson is the AOA 2, who has 22 years of service with the city, all in mail services. And then Vanessa Hunsinger, AOA 1, who's been 1 year with the city. And then under elections, I oversee the elections division. City clerk's office staffing, here's a full-time history, past several years of the staffing levels in the city clerk's office. I will note from 2015 to 16 to 2023-24, city clerk's office consisted of a staff of 5. With the passage of Measure H and the approval of council, we were allocated an additional position, so we're now at 6, which takes us back to our staffing levels prior to 2008, where the city clerk's office consisted of a staff of 6. Department revenues and expenses. So here's a revenue outlook for the office of the city clerk. As you'll notice, city clerks does not have much revenue. The revenue that we do get is a reimbursement from Modesto City Schools for the cost to administer the election for them. So we bill them and then we get reimbursed from them for the cost of administrative services. Central mail services, the inter service fund, and basically those reimbursements or revenues are ISF related depending on the mail that has been sent out by various departments. Department expenditure budget. We have the actuals from 2020 to 2020, 2021 to 2023, 2024. You can see that they vary. One thing that I do want to point out from 2023 to 2024, you'll notice there was an increase from $1,381,000 to about $1,816,000, and that increase was due to it being an election year this year. So we have the 3 council seats and the 3 school board seats. So that's where that additional cost comes from. So city clerk's office expenses by appropriation unit, city attorney Sanchez had mentioned A, B, and C's. So A is the salary and benefits, B is inter-service funds, C is discretionary. And you will see that jump from 2023 to 2024. And again, that increase is due to the cost of having an election. Mail services, inter-service funds, here's again the appropriations by your A, B's, and C's. And again, those have been pretty constant, and those vary on the amount of mail that departments are sending out. Impact of Measure H on the city clerk's office. Addition of the deputy city clerk position has enhanced operational capacity, facilitating process improvements for greater efficiency. In addition, it helped the city clerks expand service for internal staff and elected officials. It's elevated our team morale and engagement. In a nutshell, the addition of the much-needed additional position within the city clerk's office has led to a significant enhancement in services provided to the public. We now have 2 staff members processing those public records requests. Public records requests continue to increase. 2 years ago when I started, we were at 600. Now we've surpassed 850. Overall, the inclusion of the much-needed position has been instrumental in advancing the office's mission of serving the public and council with efficiency. Thank you. I'm open to any questions.
Any questions from the Finance Committee? Seeing none, any questions of the clerk from council members? Seeing none?
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question? I'm sorry.
Dan, you said that we have resolutions dating back to the 1800s?
Yes, they're online on the city.
Online,
Mhm.
okay. But I remember touring that room where the records are kept.
Yes, we also maintain the originals in our library. We call it the vault.
Is that vault fireproof?
I'm not sure because we had discussed that many years ago when I was here, and we're not sure if it's fireproof. That's why it was imperative for us to scan them and microfilm as well.
Okay. Just being the largest city in the county, I know other smaller municipalities do have fireproof rooms that where their records are maintained and stored. Don't test it on your own, please.
No, we'd have to look at the plans.
We have Chief Wise here, maybe he could try to test it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that would be smart and prudent of us to get maybe a fireproof room just to house all of our hard records.
Okay, great. We'll check on that. Thank you.
Any other questions, the city clerk for council? Seeing none, I will open it up to the public. Any members in the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close public hearing. And further comments from Finance Committee?
I have a comment. The comment is that fire is not going to be an issue. If there's fire, it's going to be the water damage. The water damage is going to destroy the documents. So I'd be more concerned about protecting the documents in some kind of an enclosure so that if there was a fire, you're going to have sprinklers go off. And that's where you're going to have a loss. And then back to Scan Snap. I'm amazed it's going to only take 5 years to scan all that, because you have huge amount of documents that back to the early 1900s, and it's amazing.
1884.
1884.
Yes.
It's amazing that you can get all that scanned in 5 years. So.
And that's been by the diligent work of Andrea Cook, who's been working on that project. And now that we have the additional position, that's allowed for more time to scan the records.
So my comment would be really look at making those files more water safe.
Okay.
What do we have to do to make sure that if there is a fire, the sprinklers go off? We want to make sure that those documents hopefully are not destroyed by water.
Noted. Thank you.
Final comments?
I do have comments, and I have witnessed Andrea's black fingers from doing that work, so I can attest to her diligence in getting that done. But I just kudos to you and your team. You guys are small but mighty. The essence of what your office does is, like Councilmember Wright was saying, huge, so many documents. The level of detail you guys, you guys have a million balls in the air, and they're all important. And you guys do it just beautifully. You and your entire team exemplify just excellence in community service, and all of you guys are always very calm. You guys are always so helpful and friendly, and that just, in an area where I would think you'd be stressed and and just not so approachable, and you and your entire team are. So thank you for doing such a great job and allowing us to do our job.
Thank you.
Any other comments by council? Seeing none, next agenda item will be the city auditor.
And the city auditor is on Zoom, and we will bring her in now.
You're good to go.
Everyone, thanks for having me tonight. I'm going to share my screen here and quickly go through the city auditor's office. So, as you all know, the city auditor's office's goal is to be independent and objective and help the city to achieve its goals through reducing risk and improving performance and controls. Our goal ultimately is to help support government accountability and transparency. And so we do that by working with council, city management, the mayor, other charter officers, departments, to really look at how are we helping to you achieve your objectives by providing those best practices, comparing to other cities, looking at opportunities for improvement and risk reduction. Our duties are mandated by the city charter, and we're also bound by our professional standards to undertake our work with independence and objectivity. So we conduct performance audits, internal and operational audits. We look at internal controls. We identify those inefficiencies and best practices, and then we make those recommendations to you. Our reports go through the audit committee and then ultimately come to council. Our priorities this year are twofold. The first is to execute the internal audit work program. So we work with you all to identify those risks, develop that annual internal audit work program, which we'll bring to you in July. We'll conduct those internal and performance audits in accordance with generally accepted government auditing standards and other professional standards as necessary. And we also manage the city's ethics hotline in collaboration with the city attorney. Our second priority is to continue to establish the internal audit function by putting in some more processes that help to support that accountability and transparency. So the first is to establish an audit follow-up program. A lot of audits were conducted with the city 5+ years ago, and to take a look at how those audit findings have been mediated, whether the recommendations have been implemented, and then also conducting kind of quick follow-ups on other opportunities for improvement for each of those audits that were accomplished. And then second, we're going to establish an audit finding validation process. So as we provide recommendations back to the city, and these include your external auditors, we're going to provide a validation of whether those recommendations have been implemented, and we'll be doing that update on a quarterly basis for the audit committee. So your org chart is me as your city auditor, and then folks at Moss Adams who are available on a project-by-project basis depending on the scope of the work. We have a team of about 60 dedicated folks who provide internal and performance audit for the public sector. In addition to that, we have a cybersecurity team, a contract audit team, and a capital program and construction audit team that we bring in as needed depending on that scope. Your 10-year history, the audit function was vacant for some time, and we're restaffing that up to a contracted function, and you'll see that reflected in your expenditures. So like other charter officers, the city auditor does not really generate revenue, but the city has budgeted for salaries and benefits in the last couple of years. Our contract for professional services is $250,000, and we propose a flat contract going forward for next year. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Okay, does the Finance Committee have any questions of the City Auditor? Seeing none, does the Council have any questions of the City Auditor? Seeing none, I'll open it up for open it up to the public. Is any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comments and ask the Finance Committee for further comments. Seeing none, I'll ask the City Council for further comments. Seeing none, the Finance Committee is now adjourned, and we will reconvene tomorrow morning, which is Tuesday, April 16th at 8:30 a.m.